Welcome to FO Interview, a program where we interview interesting minds from around the world. I am Christopher Roper Schell, your moderator. I'm contributing editor at Fair Observer and partner at Fair Observer Intelligence. My guest today is Peter Beyer, a German politician who has been a member of the Bundestag, the federal German parliament, since 2009. Peter is a member of the Christian Democratic Union, the center-right party that, until recently, was led by Angela Merkel, and before that was led by Helmut Kohl. Peter served as the coordinator of transatlantic cooperation at the Federal Foreign Office in the Fourth Merkel Coalition government from 2018 to 2021. Peter is a lawyer by training with a keen interest in history. He is a foreign policy wonk with insightful views on the world. And so we are looking forward to an interesting conversation today. Welcome to FO Interview, Peter.
Hello to Washington, D.C., I guess, or surroundings.
So I'm just going to dive right in, if that's okay with you.
Absolutely. Go ahead.
Okay. I'm going to start off with a question I think that's on many people's minds. On February 27th, Chancellor Olaf Scholz called the February 24th Russian invasion of Ukraine a Zeitenwende. The official translation is watershed, while a dictionary translation has it as a turning point in history. So was Scholz's speech lofty rhetoric, or is it now a new German reality?
Let me first of all start with saying I came to dislike the Zeitenwende rhetoric, so to speak, because after this really great speech on February 27th by the German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, it was a vacuum. So I think we need more humility. Zeitenwende or turning point in history or watershed or whatever term you use. Yes, there have been changes, but it took a war. It needed a war to make us realize something else is going on outside of our bubble here. And that something is called reality. So yes, it's rhetoric. And as you heard already, I criticized a little bit this government because they need to move faster with the implementation of decisions. That there needs to be more than rhetoric. And if you ask the president of Ukraine, they certainly have to tell you something that they, were expecting more. And that's what I somehow criticize, and we as opposition anyway. Otherwise, we support the government because times of war, especially in your neighborhood here in Europe, is not the time to just bash, just criticize, because it's part of the opposition work that you usually do when you're in opposition. To criticize the government is not the time, but we say the things we need to say. So it's a little bit both rhetoric and a vacuum, and we need speed up support for Ukraine.
So in adapting to this new world, Germany has historically spent about 1.2% of its GDP on defense since about 1990. Now it's promising to spend more than 2%. It's also set up the 100 billion euro fund for immediate investments in the military. Do you think this means Germany will become more like France and the UK in terms of military power projection in the coming years?
So some upfront remarks. It's a super important topic that you touch upon, Chris. So thank you for that question, for bringing that up. 2014, the German government back then has made this, signed the defense investment pledge together with all the other NATO members at the summit in Wales. So until now, we have not lived up to our self-obligations. Well, if you say, well, it's not yet 2024, because that was when time was running out, where we agreed to getting at least close to 2% GDP defense budget contribution. So we have, and that is also part of reality, we have over the past 5 years or so, or maybe it's a little bit less, stepped up, and we have significantly increased our defense budget, really significantly. But still, we are not, we have not yet reached 2%. Again, I repeat what I said, as a response to your first question. It needed a war and thousands of killed people in that horrible war by Russia against Ukraine here in Europe to realize it's just not enough that we're doing. We have to do even more. So this idea to have 100 billion euros in addition as a special fund only for the Bundeswehr, for military equipment and so on, and defense project is something that is the least we can do. It's necessary. We need that. Our self-defense, our military, our Bundeswehr needs that. Taking this German chancellor by his own words in the speech end of February this year, where he said from now on at least 2% each and every year, only for the military. That is a promise that we see as a guarantee for, Germany has understood, and yes, we will do at least this for the time to come. The 100 billion sounds a lot of money, and it is a lot of money, but it needs to be sustainable. It should not just go away after 4 or 5 years. We need this commitment to our own security interests as Germany, and also as a commitment and as a reassurance to our NATO allies for the future. So yes, Germany is not only a reliable partner, it has understood finally we need to do more. We are finally on track, and we will coordinate with our NATO allies and European partners what makes sense to invest that money in a smart way.
To follow up on that, you said at least 2%. As I understand it, the deal that was struck, a week and a half ago, would have 2% as a rolling average goal. Do you think that's consistent with the interest in spending at least 2%? Does it feel like a little bit of a pullback from where the original position was?
Yeah, well, thanks for that, because that is also very important. Well, look, we need, last Friday, we needed to change our constitution, our basic law, our Grundgesetz, to have this as a special fund alongside the regular budget, this 100 billion special fund. If you so will, the German chancellor has broken his promise in his speech, where I just was quoting him when I said at least 2% from now on, each and every year, 2% of GDP just for defense, for the Bundeswehr. They needed the 2/3 supermajority in the Bundestag, so they needed our vote from the opposition, because they don't have that, the government in the parliament. So they were fighting until the end, and we were coming up with this compromise. I think the compromise is something that we can live with. We have succeeded, and I don't want to go into technical details, but we have succeeded as an opposition party to somehow, put in some of the very important topics, points there to pass that law in the Bundestag. But you're absolutely right. That was my first point of criticism when I saw that an average 2% and not at least every year. Well, practically, so I think the chancellor has broken his promise there, his own promise. Second thing is, realistically, you have to ask yourself the question: would it only have been rhetoric to say 2%? Would it have been possible to spend 2%? Nobody knows in advance how much actually concretely is 2%. Only in retrospect, when you know how strong your economy was, you will know what is 2%. And then again, also, it's difficult to spend really directly on the point 2% or even a little bit more for specific military or defense project. So I think this is a compromise that we can live with, but I can guarantee you that we will closely watch that this government is really living up to this compromise, to this that we found together with them. This is a precondition. Otherwise, there will be yet another break of a promise by this German Chancellor. So after this time span of 4 or 5 years we'll have left, we look back, of course, before that also, if we can reach this 2% in average, because it's super necessary that we do this, not only to keep our promises with our NATO allies, but also for our own security interests.
Great. Yeah, I know that's something the Americans are watching rather keenly. I'm going to switch gears here. Another keenly is inflation. In May, inflation in Germany hit 7.9%, the highest level since reunification. Energy prices have increased by 38.3% over the same time last year, while the price of food has increased by 11.1%. Some Germans are arguing that without Russian energy, the lights will go out over most of Europe and prices will rise sky high. Can Germany afford to cut off Russian gas?
Yes, it can, which does not mean it comes at no cost. You have mentioned the situation of inflation, of energy prices increasing. By the way, the latter has gone up even before the war, because we also have to see that there was a pandemic before, and it's still not completely over, with all the problems it's caused on the supply chain and so on. But of course, the Russian aggression against Ukraine has put fuel into this fire, and we will see over the course of this year. So I think in the fall and winter of this year, even higher energy prices. Although the government has done a little bit to mitigate the suffering, the sacrifice you see of the German citizens. When the prices were going down, but they're almost back to where they were before this support package that the Bundestag, on initiative of the German government, passed. So this obviously has a price tag, but then again, I thought it was a strategic mistake that we increased the energy dependency years ago, when all this fuss started on Nord Stream 2, and should we actually build it or not? I mean, we could have seen that. So 3-4 years ago, we should have stopped that and initiated the more seriously energy diversity concept. So, well, in retrospect, you're always smarter. But again, I think you could have seen that several years ago. So we would not have been in that dire straits as we are now. As we have seen, the German government issued energy sources. It's difficult. The Qataris, Saudis, and some other, and the Americans, they are potential partners in delivering energy supply, especially liquefied natural gas, LNG. But one of the problems is that Germany is lacking any kind of LNG terminals. We do not have a single one. Years ago, my own government back then, where I was a part of, promised to the Americans I remember that Dan Bryett, back then Deputy Energy Minister in the Trump administration, got by our government the promise, well, we will build within the next 2 years or so 2 LNG terminals up in the north at the shore of the North Sea. They're not there yet. So that is a bad situation, and take that or add to that Germany's decision some years ago to get out of nuclear power supply. By the end of this year, the last 2 remaining nuclear power stations will be switched off. So a lot of costs, but the short answer is yes, we can afford this. There is no blackout catastrophe on the horizon, but it costs money, and I think it's a burden on the Germans. but also we need to understand that freedom and democracy does not come as do not come without any costs. The war that is where the Ukrainians are suffering, is taken hostage of all of us, especially in Europe, and it's a war also against democracy and the rule of law and universal rights that we believe in, and we need to invest to defend them.
To your earlier point, most Americans don't understand that Germany has no LNG terminals. I remember reading that Germany was slated to build 2, that then they scrapped them. Some say in response to Biden winning the election. Now they're back on board. The reduction in nuclear is something not well known to a lot of Americans, so they're a little bit baffled why you can't switch gears. To talk about, you saying that this was foolishness a number of years ago to be so reliant on Russia. On March 31st of 2021, you argued against Nord Stream 2. And the pipeline was financed by Gazprom and several other European energy companies, and started back in 2011. And indeed, the Biden administration decided not to object and remove sanctions from those companies. At the time, you saw it as, and I'll quote you, a serious obstacle for a new start in transatlantic relations, end quote. But your government didn't agree with you at the time. Do you now feel vindicated?
I don't know. Well, I'm just saying that already years ago, everybody could have known, and those who were in incumbent positions should have known, and I think they actually knew, but did not take the consequences and make the right political decisions to stop that damn thing from being built. I have also to admit that I did not hear much about Nord Stream 2 before May 2018, but that was 4 years ago, over 4 years ago. When I really came to learn it the hard way, it was under the Trump administration, and before that really went public and was got a lot of public attention. I was very actively looking into that and meeting with experts and Nord Stream 2 representatives, as well as from the other side. So just to get that whole picture, it was clear to me that we don't need that thing, it's very healthy to see this, to say the least. I have to also admit that in the Netherlands, they have these earthquake problems. In the North Sea, we do not have many sources of oil exploitation left. So Germany needs to get these oil and gas from outside. The Germans, by the way, were against fracking in their own country. That was very emotionally, not very much fact-based, discussed several years ago. So we decided politically not to follow up on that, other than a little bit of doing scientific research. So here's Germany getting out of nuclear power supply, building somehow this stupid pipeline, which never got, thank goodness, into full operation. And then, we don't want fracking. So a lot of things that, I don't know, has nobody really thought about the future, where this is going, where can we get our energy needs from? Have we really believed that green energy, which is a good thing, but can substitute all of this within a small number of years? Or do we thought that the Russians will always be our suppliers without, increasing the costs? And I'm not meaning money, but politically. We gave them the potential to blackmail us, and that is something that I really cannot accept. So vindicated or not, it's not about that.
thank you for reminding me of the Netherlands issue, which didn't get a lot of press over here, but it was kind of, as you said, a bit of a perfect storm that left Germany somewhat prone in terms of energy. I want to move on to a slightly different question. A German told our editor-in-chief off the record, quote, "After World War II, Germany has been a political pygmy and an economic giant. Now it might be growing politically, but it is shrinking economically. The Anglo-Saxons will benefit from this war, while German industry, German taxpayers, and German workers will pay the cost." It's the end of the quote. What do you think about that?
It's not black and white in that situation, like it is never. Yes, we see this situation. The development comes at a high cost. We have mentioned that before. Germany still is the strongest economy on the continent and the fourth largest in the world. If it will stay there, I don't know, but certainly Germany will remain strong. I'm very confident about that. But that requires that we, as Germany and the German government, reacts and responds to some things, to these realities. So coming back to the very first question that we were talking about, a topic, the Zeitenwende, watershed, turning point in history, to me, to that Zeitenwende topic belongs as part of the reality that's out there, that we need to react and readjust our, some of our concepts. Energy is something, then security architecture within Europe is something else, and even all the way to offer better environments for a startup scene. There's so much more to do. We have a lot of young German talent that are not hiding, but are staying in the Silicon Valley. Tons of young Germans who want to come back, but say, Peter, we don't have that infrastructure. Tax laws here very, very unfavorable for that situation, and we have so many, the legal framework, the legal situation, the tax issue, startup friendly or entrepreneur friendly. So that is something that we need to really improve much better, and I think there's no serious reason to be afraid of the future here in my country. Germany and the Germans are strong, they are motivated, but they also have to understand we cannot go on and live in our comfort zone, protected by our friends on the other side of the Atlantic, the Americans. We need to invest money, brain, being open for alterations. But I think we can do that.
Speaking along the lines of powerful Europe, let me address NATO. Germany has backed demands of Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, the Baltic republics, for more troops, more fighter jets, and more air defense. Is NATO in a position to take on Russia and protect its Baltic members? As a side note, I've actually been to the eastern part of Estonia, and when you look over and you see Germany there and you see this little bridge, you just feel like or look over and see Russia there, you just feel like the tanks could be rolling across the border any minute. It's a very strange feeling.
Yeah, I have every understanding for the Baltic states that they're really afraid. Have been for several years already. Have been warning for several years something could happen, and in that situation with the war in Europe, they have all reason to be afraid, because the dictator in the Kremlin behind the walls there has shown that he is really the aggressor they were afraid of. So to your question, are we prepared? Can NATO actually defend and guarantee security for the Baltic states? And I would add also for other parts of the NATO alliance. I would say this: the situation in Ukraine has shown something that Vladimir Putin never envisioned. That is unity, the Western alliance coming to so close together like we've seen never before, or for a longer time not seen, and also understanding if an Article 5 situation comes along, we need to be prepared. We need to be able to act rapidly. And I think the Russian president should make no mistake here. He should understand NATO is prepared and NATO is willing to act according to its own Article 5 statute when the situation comes along. Now, of course, we all hope that the situation would not come. But we support Ukraine wherever we can as NATO, training, equipment. The United States is doing a fantastic job. We are lagging a little bit behind, but again, what I said earlier, I hope we're getting to delivering of weapons faster, which is, by the way, 180 degrees turning in our policies, not to deliver weapons into conflict or even war zones. We've changed that. That's the Zeitenwende part of that. So NATO is prepared, and that's the good thing. We reassure ourselves in being confronted with this situation. We are reassuring ourselves who we are, why NATO is there, and it's not only on paper. There might have been folks out there in NATO saying, well, okay, military folks are doing here and there some training and so on, but we never thought a war would actually happen. But now you see there's a good reason why we need NATO. It has a reason, and we invest in that.
Yeah, and to a degree, it's quite a reversal. I remember in 2019, Macron said, when asked, was Article 5 dead? He said, I don't know. And now you see NATO, there's a concretization there. And speaking of, President Erdogan of Turkey is opposing bids by Sweden and Finland, who are looking to join NATO and strengthen it. And he's called both countries incubators for terrorist groups and appears to be playing hardball with the West. Does NATO have a Turkey problem?
Yet another one. Turkey is a NATO member. It should always behave like that. Sometimes you wonder if it's if Turkey or Erdogan. Let's focus on that person because he's the autocrat there. He's a strong man. If he really knows that his country is a member of NATO and what this really means, given also his buying of some military equipment in Russia rather than from NATO allies. But in the end, I mean, he plays the game of poker. You called it the hardball. He wants to get something out of this. I'm pretty sure he will not block in the end the membership, the NATO membership of Sweden and Finland. He wants to get something out of this. He's I don't know, almost like on a bazaar, Oriental bazaar. He's doing something, although it's serious, could potentially be also dangerous. And we're there to, man. I mean, we're talking about NATO. Also, Article 5 is there for you if your country would be attacked. I think he understands quite well the situation, that he sees his time to request something. He's these terrorist organizations, as he calls them, that they are giving them refuge there in Sweden and Finland. In the end, he will not block it, and we will be fine. But Turkey, I mean, Turkey is a problem, and it's something that is unmotivated. We don't need that. And if only one member of any club, be it NATO or EU, Hungary, for example, but let's stick to NATO. If one member, behaves like that, it shows only sends out signals of weakness to our enemies. We should not do that.
President Macron has faced criticism and condemnation for saying we must not humiliate Russia. So that the day when the fighting stops, we can build an exit ramp through diplomatic means. You've been involved in transatlantic matters. How do you see the US-EU relations developing?
The French president has also said something like, some years ago, NATO was brain dead, if you remember. So every now and then, Emmanuel Macron seems to come up with something.
That was the same 2019. When he talked about Article 5, whether or not it was dead, but yeah.
And sometimes, I think maybe he doesn't mean it like verbatim, but as a provocation, just to make people start thinking about how can we do it better. At least that's what I hope. So you're asking about EU-US, US-EU relations. They have certainly come under pressure under the Trump administration, although Trump and his folks there had said many points where they were right. Nord Stream 2, 5G, Chinese technology, and several other things where he and his guys were right. But the style was very questionable, and it was embarrassing for us that especially Donald Trump, not as a U.S. president, but being this character that he was or still is, told us the right things. So everybody was somewhere on this side of the Atlantic, and maybe in other parts of the world as well relieved when he did not win the last elections. But EU and US relations, and I could speak better for German-US relations. I think they're really excellent, regardless if it's a Joe Biden or an Obama or Donald Trump. They have, because there's this really strong fundament on which our relations are based. It cannot be shattered. Even the strongest earthquake imaginable cannot break that. The shared values, the increasingly shared interests. It has every now and then, even under before Trump. I mean, it has its issues, comes under pressure, and every now and then. Remember the war in Iraq, where the German government back then did not agree, and so on. So we always have some things that we don't agree with, especially sitting here in Germany in this year, in 2022. This year we celebrate together with our American friends the 75th anniversary of the Marshall Plan, or ERP, the European Recovery Program back then. That we have to remind ourselves where Germany would be without the support of the American friends, all the way up to the reunification some 30 years ago. And that situation now, where Germany sees that without the Americans, Europe would be in a bad shape with this war that we're having here. So it's a strong fundament, cultural, trade, economical, technological, security relations, personal relations, individual relations, millions of them. So I would say they are very good. We have a lot of things on the table where we still need to come to terms with: tax issues, tariffs, standards. But that's work in progress, as it has always been. So I would say, on a scale from 1 to 10, 10 being perfect relations, it's a 9. So if I would say 10, then that would mean there's nothing else to do, which would be a lie. There's always work in progress.
Well, on that high note, I want to be respectful of your time and I'll let you go. But I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us, and we'll work on that 9 and try to bring it to a 10. Thanks, Peter.